Hey everyone, so let's talk about what employers look for. Welcome to Q&A. So several people actually sent in the same question last month. They were essentially asking, how do I keep my job? How do I hold down my job and avoid getting singled out to be laid off or fired? That's an excellent question. Let's dive in. Now, right off the hop, I got to address a couple of assumptions here. First off, we can't control all situations with our behaviors. Okay, sometimes it's just not up to that, and there's not much we can do. However, there's a lot of other situations that we can, and there's a few things that we can do, and we'll get into that. Secondly, I'm also going to make the assumption that you're doing your job correctly, okay? That's pretty important. But once we get past those, we get into the question, what employers look for, okay? What employers look for in an employee. That's what this boils down to. Now, I'm going to give you 4 points, okay? 4 things that if you do these things, the odds of your employer singling you out to be laid off or fired are pretty minimal, okay? So here we go. Number 1, minimize conflict with your boss or your bosses, okay? If you deal with multiple people that are at a higher level than you are, and you interact with them on a regular basis, okay? You might have more than one boss. So this applies to all of them, okay? Minimize conflict with them. Don't challenge them. Unless they're the type of person that has a history of handling this well, and most people don't, okay? Don't challenge them. There's actually a meme that it's very old. I don't know if it came from the 1980s or 70s or whatever, but you might have seen it. It says, 1, the boss is always right. 2, if the boss is wrong, see number 1. Okay? Memes are usually funny because they're true, and this one is true in a lot of situations. Even myself, even me when I was a boss, I prided myself on allowing my subordinates to exercise a lot of initiative, to do things their way, and to voice their concerns, or if they could see issues coming, I encouraged them to voice those concerns in the planning stage before you got to the execution stage when they were, much more expensive and time-consuming to address then. Okay? And this is, I believe, the way companies should be run. In a perfect world, all companies would be run this way, and all bosses would understand this concept. But unfortunately, there are a lot of bad bosses out there, and especially the ones that didn't go to business school, and they don't know how to manage people. And instead, when a subordinate voices their concerns or objections over instructions that the boss has given, the boss tends to take it personally and regard that employee as some kind of problem employee with a bad attitude. Now, I think this is human nature. Even I have to admit, I was not immune to falling into this trap. I think there's a little part deep down in all bosses that they just want to give instructions and then have people carry them out. And they don't want to argue over absolutely everything. And guilty as charged, even on my best days, that issue keeps coming up. And unfortunately, that's a side effect of working with some smart employees that can give you a good run for your money, and they can see issues a mile away when perhaps you haven't, because they deal with that thing every day, 9 to 5, and you don't. So God knows there's a lot of reasons why this would happen, and you would want to challenge your boss and raise objections and raise concerns. But if you're afraid for your job and you're afraid that they might single you out to lay you off, what I would recommend is that you just don't challenge your boss or your bosses. Okay? That's point number 1. Point number 2, it's very similar. How can I put this? Minimize conflict with your coworkers. Okay? Try to be cooperative. Okay? Now, once again, God knows there's a lot of reasons why you might not want to just conform to the wishes of your coworkers all the time, and their expectations might be out to lunch, and you might have to correct for that. There's many reasons why this would occur, many valid reasons. Maybe you're just smarter than your coworkers. Maybe you have more experience than they do. Okay, there's many valid reasons why this would happen. Unfortunately, if you end up doing this on a regular basis, okay, and it leads to a lot of conflict with your colleagues, your coworkers, you can be labeled as somebody that's a malcontent. You could be labeled as a difficult person to work with, okay? And especially you technical people out there and you introverts, okay? From your perspective, you're doing a great thing by addressing issues up front. And trust me, I know where you're coming from, and it's the right thing to do. However, it can have the side effect where people do not regard you favorably. Okay, so be aware of this. And what I would recommend is just try to be cooperative. Try to just go with the flow more, okay? If you're afraid they might lay you off, then unfortunately this takes priority. Okay, so that's point number 2. Point number 3 is just to be more likable. Now, I've done a video, okay, I'm gonna put it right here. Okay, I've done a video on this. If you really wanna get into how to be more likable, I'll put the link right here any minute now. Okay, you could check that out if you're interested. But being likable is really important, okay? Hopefully, if you've seen any of my videos on hiring and recruiting and how to do job interviews, being likable in the interview is what a lot of times makes people select you for the job. It also makes people select you to be retained if they are forced to lay off staff, okay? Maybe not the best thing in the world for business, you could argue, but that's what we see. So that's point number 3, be likable. Point number 4, okay, and this is to be accommodating. Okay, when somebody asks you to do something, okay, presumably somebody who has the authority to do this, they ask you to do something, the first thing out of your mouth should be, sure. That's the first thing that should come out of your mouth. Okay, now if you have a big workload, the second thing that should come out of your mouth is, is it okay if I do X first, if I do this other thing first, or is this priority 1? And then if they say, oh no, this is priority 1, and they're not your boss, then you say, okay, no problem. Well, I'll just get my boss to confirm that I have to do this now, and I will take care of it. Okay? That's just one example of someone who's accommodating, okay? If you do that, generally you will, all things being equal, you will be well regarded. You will not get a reputation of someone who is associated with problems or associated with attitude issues or communication issues or anything like that. Okay, so that would be my recommendation. Those are my 4 points. Now, as some of you have probably gathered by now, if you were to wholeheartedly put these 4 things into practice, it's going to lead to issues of their own, okay? For example, your workload could soar, or you don't raise valid concerns in the beginning that are going to resurface later in a more serious form. Okay? I'll be the first to acknowledge that these things are real and they need to be addressed. However, as I said, if you're in a situation where you fear that they're going to single you out to be laid off, in this case, unfortunately, especially if you're a worker, you're a lower level employee, priority is number 1. Look out for number 1. And what I would recommend, unfortunately, is to disengage. Okay, if you've never heard of that before, once again, I'll put a link to a video I've done where I talk about that. Disengaging. Okay, essentially, it's saying to yourself, look, I'm paid to be here 8 hours a day. During those 8 hours, I will do whatever you want. I don't care how idiotic, I don't care how ridiculous or how pointless it is. I'll do it. And then beyond that, I don't care. I'm not running the show. You guys are running the show. I'll do whatever you want while I'm here, and you take responsibility for it. Obviously, it's not the situation we want, but unfortunately, in this world, in the world of business and management, which is fraught with inefficiencies and, quite frankly, incompetent managers, which we see a lot, I'll be the first to admit, this can be the only recourse you have to be able to tolerate your job. Not the best situation, and hopefully this is only temporary, but it can help alleviate some of the emergent issues that come out of following these 4 recommendations. Okay, so hopefully that was helpful. Thank you very much for your attention. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And just remember this, okay? Your job may suck, but you are awesome. I'll see you on the next one.